So we know you're huge on sleep, compliance, gut health, all this other stuff. Why don't you give me 3 things in the diet realm that drive you absolutely batshit crazy, and 3 things in kind of the strength and conditioning workout realm that drive you absolutely batshit crazy? You don't have to name names. You don't have to do anything. Just, let's just air some shit out, man.
Yeah, these are easy. These are things that I personally experienced and that I see commonly in my clients, whether it's dad bods and soccer moms or professional athletes. And so probably number 1 when dieting is being over restrictive, your egg white, tilapia, and broccoli diet. And I see such huge problems with that. People lose a ton of muscle tissue. Women in particular end up with anemia, amenorrhea, osteoporosis, hypothyroidism. It's just not sustainable, and they lose a ton of muscle mass and end up at the doctor's office getting a multitude of prescriptions and shots for D3 and iron and a host of other things. So over restriction, that maddens me. There's no reason why on an equivocal calorie basis, why you can't continue to consume red meat, whole eggs, dairy, Greek yogurt, fruit, salt your food, and make a lifestyle out of foods that you enjoy, particularly whole foods like those that give you all the micronutrients that you need to be healthy and have energy and to satiate you. And so I don't prescribe any of those extreme diets, even and up to including Miss Olympia competitor Nadia Wyatt, who took 3rd at the Miss Olympia, who didn't eat any egg whites or tilapia or broccoli. She ate steak and whole eggs and salted her food and had potatoes and fruit every day. And she loved the experience. And we're working with her again for the Olympia this year. Number 2, on the other extreme, my fat friends, my old Mark Bell, and myself, numerous times when I got up over 300 pounds, and when Hofthor came to me 4 years ago and he said, Stan, I'm getting fatter. I'm not getting stronger. You remember, you were the one who directed him to me when he called you and told you that he needed help with that. And I very much appreciate that. And one of the first things I realized, because I lived it and I studied it, is that he was suffering from metabolic syndrome. And that's, fatty liver, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol, partitioning nutrients towards fat instead of muscle. And so all the work that he wasn't recovering as fast, and he was having bloating and digestion issues and water retention, all of those things. So that's second on my list of things that frustrate me, is when people just get over fat. They eat too much calories trying to get bigger, and they stay too heavy too long, and they don't periodize their weight. Nobody would max out every week all year round. But yet they try and maintain a maximum body weight all year round, or just keep gaining and gaining and gaining. At some point, you need to periodize your weight. You need to diet down and lose, I say, around 7 to 10% of your body weight. We took Hofthor from 435 down to the low 390s. When you do that, you almost entirely remedy fatty liver, and you increase insulin sensitivity, and your cholesterol drops, and your blood pressure, and all of that. And then, we bulked back up, but we utilized a different diet protocol that allowed him to gain more muscle and less fat. Also, the CPAP and the 10-minute walks and the vitamin D3 and choline and things that helped his body better build muscle and prevent the fat gain. So those are probably the 2 biggest. I don't even know if I have a third. I think that covers just about all of it. I guess the third would be people who are who think that their diet's the only diet. And I've never said that the vertical diet's the only diet. I've said many times the best diet's the one you'll follow. And when somebody tells somebody the only way to lose weight is keto or carnivore or paleo or vegan, or it doesn't matter. There's many paths to the same destination. And really, the goal is to help people understand that it has to be a lifestyle, it has to satiate them, and they have to have energy. And it certainly needs to be healthy, as mentioned in the micronutrient deficient discussion. And so, I have, as a vertical diet coach, I have clients that I recommend the vertical diet or a carnivore to. They usually present with severe autoimmune disorders or have type 2 diabetes, or keto if their appetite is out of control, and some people find that it remedies that, or intermittent fasting for some people. I tend to like to eat because I want to be able to have good workouts, and we're seeing more and more of the keto people start to acknowledge recently that carbs around workouts can be very beneficial for performance and recovery. We saw it with Dr. Peter Attia. We saw it with Mike Mutzel. We saw it with Paul Saladino. Mark Bell himself has started using some more carb timing methods around workouts. And so I just don't want to be, I don't want people to get too dogmatic about the diet and work with the fundamentals that matter, and then try and make sure that their client can build a lifestyle if it works for them. So then, long term they can maintain the diet, because 95% of people who go on a diet regain all the weight within 3 years. So those are my top 3 on dieting.
So before we get going anywhere, you've had a chance to work with a lot of people. Can you tell us the story of and again, we don't need to name names here. So like the biggest, worst horror story that was ever presented to you, either from a client or that you heard from a wife or, a training partner or something else, who was literally the least prepared to go in and do this, or what was the worst thing you ever heard that someone was doing in order to try and accomplish said goals?
Well, it's not even one story. It's extremely common in the guru diet industry, the bikini girls, extremely common for them to over-restrict, to eat the egg whites. The avidin protein binds to biotin, and then they get dry hair and skin. They end up suppressing their thyroid, so they end up, their hair starts falling out. They lose an extraordinary amount of muscle. We see osteoporosis is very common, particularly in runners who over diet. They get shin splints, and we see amenorrhea, a cessation of the menstrual period, and sometimes it can take a year or 2 for that to come back if they've dieted too hard, too long. I think it's tragic and it's extremely common. And I think the most tragic thing about the whole bikini guru diets is that the general public now, the soccer moms, see these women on stage in their bikinis in the best shape of their life and have no idea what their medical conditions are. Their hair loss, their PCOS, their menstrual period stopping, of course, the anemia. It takes them, and then immediately after the show, they get this enormous edema, water retention that is extremely painful and persistent. It can last weeks or a month or more, and they gain back a significant amount of body fat. And they just feel terrible. We've seen it because you and I are in the industry. We've seen it very commonly, but the general public doesn't see the dirty behind the scenes post competition rebounds. And so that to me is what's most tragic, and it's extremely common. It's not even as though it's a single story or a one worst story. It's pervasive in the industry.
And I don't want to name names here, but didn't you have a wife of a client of yours tell you that in his quest to gain weight and gain muscle, that he was actually eating pizza while taking shits?
Yeah, that often happens with my big athletes, is that calories are king. There's no question that if you don't eat enough calories, that you're going to start losing weight, and mass moves mass. And if you're a strength athlete, then you're going to get weaker. And so that's the first goal, is to eat enough calories. But there's problems with that. If you're eating, as we talked with Hofthor's situation, if you just start eating pizza, pasta, and pancakes and gain a whole bunch of fat, also the digestion issues are extreme. And I experienced this throughout my career. When I was dieting for bodybuilding, I would cook all my own food at home and carefully eat, my own foods. And so I did really, really well. My digestion was excellent. But when I started gaining weight, I would end up going out more often. I would get pizzas and burritos and all that kind of thing. I would have a whole bunch of digestion issues. And it turns out that one of my triggers was seed oils, and it would give me gastric distress to the point where I would get diarrhea within 30 minutes of eating anything that had canola or cottonseed or corn oil or soybean or sunflower. And most restaurants cook everything in that. And so that to me was very difficult because I couldn't identify the problem. I thought it was a food, not something that was in every food. But I did have a client that was doing the pizza, pasta, pancakes, trying to maintain a significant amount of weight. And his wife disclosed to me that he actually he stopped eating on the toilet. And it's not like I hadn't experienced that myself or heard it before. Flex Wheeler's been very candid about the fact when he was eating Orange Roughy that what that would have happened to him all the time, shitting orange and not being able to control when it comes out. And, even Eddie Cohn talked about his explosion in his single ply squat suit. It's very common. Digestion problems are huge, and that's why I lead with a low FODMAP diet and focus on gas and bloating with the vertical diet.